Hi, you guys. Today I want to talk about painting grass. If you're doing landscapes, chances are there's some sort of grass in it, unless you're doing a snowy landscape. You're going to be dealing with grass. And grass has perspective. Wow, you're thinking about really? And it also has direct brush direction. And that's what I want to talk about because I often see this painted incorrectly and that you may get all the colors right and everything else perfectly. And if the brush strokes are kind of off, then it doesn't look like a natural landscape, all right? So for example, let me give you an example of some paintings that we have done with grass. This is a painting called Whittling Boy, and this is one of the tutorials on our website. And what's kind of neat about this painting was it was originally done by an artist named Homer, late 1800s, and let me just get it up here to let me put Homer on here for you. And you'll notice that even back then, I want you to see something sort of interesting about this grass, is that the brushstrokes are all vertical. Now, they may, so the longer detailed grasses may have direction, but the overall background grasses, the brushstrokes are overlapping vertical brushstrokes, okay? So why would that be? Well, let's just go back up here and look at a photograph of some horses running through, there's a photograph running through grass. Now you'll notice that the front grass, all right, the front grass is taller, and as the grass grows back, it's shorter, and then way back here, you barely see it. But still, even if you were painting this way back here, you would want to paint that with brush strokes that were up and down, straight up and down. I'm just going to can you kind of see this? This is that middle ground. This is what we call middle ground. And here's the grass growing up and down. It's in layers, but you'll notice that how would you paint this? A lot of people would just paint the brushstrokes going back and forth like that. You still want vertical overlapping brushstrokes, even if they're very small, all right? And then as you come up here to the front, into this grass, then you're talking about painting it in some grass with individual brush strokes. But a lot of times, someone will say, well, I'll buy a rake brush, I'll buy a grass brush. That's less important to me than your brush direction. Here's another example of grass in a photograph. This is the one I showed you earlier. Notice how the other thing I want to say is the grass gets shorter as it goes back. In other words, just like a person would be smaller if they were back here on the road, your grass gets shorter. So those are two good examples of that. Now we'll come back over here and look at another painting that we've got. This is one, Road's End and Land's End, I think we called it. And notice that the grass in the front, in the foreground, we've got the grass bending toward the subject, which is the little girl and the dog. And this is a part of this tutorial. The road is on YouTube and the little girl is in the academy, if you guys ever have painted this. And notice the grass is bending here, but this little field back here that's kind of off in the distance, that still is tiny little up and down brush strokes. Another example of a painting tutorial we have is this was originally done in the late 1800s. It's called Apple Trees Outside of Paris. This is an academy lesson. And again, you'll notice that the grass is overlapping, and even though it's bending a bit, it's still bending. It's done in groups, and it's directional. But then when we get back here, it's back straight up and down. And over here, it's slightly bent. So it's okay if it has a slight bend or direction. That's all right. But you don't want to paint it like a fence. That's a lot of times I see it painted like a picket fence. You want to paint it in sort of clumps and clusters and overlapping clusters. Let's see if I've got another example. Here's I love this painting. This is one that we have on YouTube, and it's a fall scene. And notice that the grass back here is so short that you're not going to see any big long bits of grass. But again, every one of these brush strokes was done vertically. And sometimes what happens is when you're watching a tutorial, you're so excited about painting the tutorial that sometimes you just sort of forget about brush direction, and you don't want to do that. So let's see if we can find one more example. Monet was one of my favorite artists, and this is a tutorial we have on YouTube. Again, this we do this. No, I think rather in the Art Academy, not YouTube. But even though he had all these different colors of grass, and then we have a short tutorial on that on mixing greens in our Art Academy, notice that all the brush strokes are pretty much vertical. Now here we've bent them going this way. You really don't want grass you don't want lines taking your eye out of the focus and taking you off the picture, okay? So I wouldn't want grass just running that way and taking my eye off the picture either. It's all sort of going either up or kind of going in this direction. Probably a really good example of this is this photo right here. Now here's a little photograph of some grass, and if you were to paint that and do it just the way the photo was, okay, just the way the photo was, you'd have a tendency to want to paint the grass going off this way, going whoop, and that way, which you don't want to do. Instead, you'd want it curving back this way and curving back that way. And probably, okay, so probably the other thing I would want is that I probably wouldn't want this whole section of the picture anyway. I'd probably work on cropping something, and I'd take it about like this and there. Then my center, there's my center of interest. And again, I'd have my grass kind of focused in the direction of kind of this way, and kind of maybe up here like this. I don't want it leaving, okay? And then in the background, everything's blended in this very short little bits. So you're talking about longer grass in the front. Couple of things happens to it when it goes into the background that's important to recognize. Let's go back to our horses for a minute and look at that, because I think that's a great example of what happens to grass in the background, is that it sort of loses its color as it gets back. It gets a little bit grayer in color. Besides getting shorter, the colors are less bright. The brighter greens are up front, and they get grayer as they go back. So if you can remember those things about grass, that for the most part, it's painted vertically. It's painted in layers, lights and darks. And it's also, your detail in your brush direction is for your up close areas, not everywhere, okay? So if you've enjoyed these small tutorials, if you've enjoyed watching Ginger's Gems, I want to know the problems that you're having with grass. This particular painting is another one that we have on YouTube, again with grass and layers of grass growing up around a fence and apple blossoms, and painting in an impressionistic style. Really like this painting if you haven't seen this one and haven't tried this on YouTube. But take a moment, think about what are some of the things that are important that I need to learn to paint. I've gotten a lot of good examples. I'm making a list of things that have come up that people want to know, and so your opinion matters to me. And if you're enjoying Ginger's Gems, let me know. And your comments are read, answered, and appreciated. So have a fabulous day and happy painting.